Good evening, everyone. We are so absolutely excited to have you here with us tonight. I want to first start by talking about how important this last day of the month is for us because we are celebrating um, the last day of Women's History Month. So we're really, really excited to start off by saying this is a very, 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 very important time of year. And that this has been a month full of exciting adventures, experiences. We've had a lot of things going on in the news this month. So this has been a pretty exciting month. It's been filled with lots of things in the news. It's just been a great month, except for, of course, we know a few things that we won't discuss today. So I'm very excited about tonight's guest because we are going to have a very meaningful conversation with her about a lineage and legacy. And she is doing some amazing work that she will talk about with us tonight and why her work is so important. Miss Daryl Joy Walters, who is innovative, trend setting, always on the upward move, is here with us tonight to have an amazing conversation about understanding the importance of genealogy and how it relates to us. And she gives us a different perspective on it as it relates to not waiting until we are 50 or 60 years old and finally taking an interest in the family history, but taking an interest right now in knowing who our people are. So I'm going to go over some of her biographical information, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. Daryl Joy Walters is a native of Shreveport. She has a bachelor's in religion and philosophy from Wiley College in Texas. She has a specialized certificate from Yale University's Women Campaign School. She also has a master's of divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary. Outside of her academic experience, she has a life that is committed to uplifting the community and the world. She has been a part of the Democratic State Central Committee, and she helps to shape restorative justice from a theological aspect. She has had quite a journey. And one of the most interesting things that she is doing right now is she has created a network called the Jeans Club, which is a community that is on Clubhouse but exists everywhere, where she specializes in helping others find information about their past, their family, their connections, and their history. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And so, if there's anything I missed that you want to add in, Daryl, please feel free to share because I try to hit those key points, but I know what means a lot to you for the people to know as well. So, please share.
Will do, will do. Look, you definitely just hit all the spots. And I want to thank you, Jamie, for inviting me back because look, I have to admit, everybody, I was a little caught up when I was initially given this invitation. And you don't always get an invitation to come back, especially if you miss your appointment the first time. So I want to thank you for thinking of me for a time such as this. Happy Women's Month. I mean, we're gonna celebrate until
Yay!
it is 12 o'clock tonight.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love
Because
it.
us as women, we know the things that we go through in life, and so we are due more than 31 days, but we will take the 31 days of celebration,
Absolutely.
and we will celebrate all 31 days up until the last second. And so,
Absolutely.
again, thank you so much for extending this invitation to me tonight. I am honored to be here with the Black intellectualism movement.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, I definitely wanted to have you back. I completely understand that things happen. I think that what you're doing is so important, it's so vital. And we're in a time right now where, um, as the Black community, we have more power, more access,
Hmm.
more know-how than ever. And so we need to know what do we do with that power? What do we need to do with that know-how? And how can we make sure that, we talk about legacy building, we talk about breaking generational curses, but we don't know a lot of times what that looks like. And so when we know the
Absolutely.
people who are actually putting those wheels in motion, we need to make sure that we're getting that knowledge out there. So before I ask the first question, I want to remind those who are tuning in to please hit that like and share button so that you can encourage people to tune in tonight. We will be available for replay for those of you who have missed the conversation, but you know that you can ask questions, you can be engaged, and you can definitely tag people to tune in. So let's get into the first question. The intense cultural work that you do is very unique, especially for our generation and even younger. We're seeing them get on board with digging and learning more. Why is it so important for us to know about our lineage and our identity?
Sure. So, my godfather, he used to always tell me that in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been.
Absolutely.
And I've just found that so true. I found that it held true. I found that when I began to look at history as a child who initially hated history, like, oh, I don't like history, I don't like history. And so, oh yeah, and God Daddy got on to me. And so when I began to look at the power that's in history with all of our ancestors, it's like, man, I need to know more. And so essentially it's important because um it actually can uplift us in what we feel about ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, and what do we feel about our identity, and how um a piece of history can affirm maybe something that we're trying to do, because no doubt about it, just like you are very very radical, very very intellectual. When you look back into your history, I would not doubt that you had a grandmother or a great grandparent or an aunt or someone along the way in your own life, in your own lineage, who definitely, was a part of the Black Panthers or was a part of some portion of any part of the movement, because we've had so many movements. So I just said, something that was attached to the civil rights movement, but I mean, Black women helped win the Civil War. So, we get talked about because it's like, oh, Black women, they just talk too much. Okay, well, if it wasn't for us talking, there would have been no
Yes,
way for you out
yes,
there in the Civil War. Okay. And
absolutely.
so I mean, it all works hand in hand, and so if anybody is out there just wondering, well, why do I need to know this, you need to know, because again, it's liberation, and it's that sense of pride that you have when you can say, I come from this place, or my ancestor comes from this place, or what have you, and just to be able to freely talk about that thing. So yep. Thank you.
It's always interesting. I recall several moments growing up when I would hear people talk about, how they non-black people talk about how their ancestors came over from Ireland, or their ancestors came from Australia, or how their people got here. We know that many of our people got here through enslavement, but we don't actually know who they are. So it definitely gives us a sense of identity, when it comes to knowing that lineage. For me, I know that it is definitely um, giving me a sense of identity. I've been doing some more intense digging over the past year. And we have collections in my family, collections of stories and recordings that my mom collected from my grandfather, things that I was able to write down from my grandmother before she passed. And my mom even has a quilt that's been in our family about 5 or 6 generations now. And so, things like that are always, I love to go home and just touch that quilt. And I've already told my mom, like, you better not ever make my brother think he is getting that quilt. I'm getting
That's
that.
it. That's it. This is
That
my
is
quilt.
mine, because just feeling in and seeing the cotton that I know was processed differently, and the way she is taking care of it, it just feels so important to me every single time I put my hands on it. So I love what you share with us about the importance of it. So I've been watching you. And I know the most recently I saw the thing that you posted was about going to Sicily Island to meet some family. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. So I
So
have family in Sicily Island, and I have family that I just found over in St. Joseph and Waterproof. And I'm like, oh, well, I better go meet these people.
Isn't that was so amazing to me? Because we were talking about genealogy and talking about the fact that you formulated this club, but before you started taking care of other people and helping other people and informing them, you started doing the work for yourself. So I've really enjoyed watching you share these tidbits with us about continuing to discover more family members and things like that. So I wanted to know if you could tell me what you've been able to gain as you've learned more about your family lineage over the years. What have you been able
Hmm.
to gain?
Let's see. I was always proud of my family. I mean, just always proud of, my parents, always proud of my grandparents. I began to learn things about my great grandparents. So I'm braggadocious about them. But nevertheless, most recently I have found war cards from the US colored troops. And my ancestors served in the US colored troops in Vicksburg, in Natchez, Mississippi.
Are you
And
serious?
oh yeah, absolutely. And I could not be more peacock proud. And I know it's them because the plantation that two of the plantations that they're saying that they, come from, when they, some of them did claims for pensions when they lost loved ones, brothers, sisters, I mean brothers, or sons in the war, because women, we didn't serve at that time, so I had to catch myself and correct myself. But nevertheless, when I see Anchor Plantation, I'm like, okay, well, I know where Anchor is. We still,
Right.
are really attached to Anchor. And then I learned, okay, there's the Copeland Plantation, and it's nothing like seeing your second great grandfather with
Absolutely.
your second great grandmother's husband, and they're going to assist Peggy Wilson. I mean, and when you look at the census tract and you see Peggy Wilson was born in 1805 in Virginia, and now she's in Louisiana, and it's like, wow, well, was she someone's mother? Was she a grandmother?
Mhm.
I mean, but just to know that they thought more of themselves, and
Absolutely.
even just more of me, more,
Absolutely.
just they knew that, hey, if I want freedom, I have to go fight for it, and freedom is
Absolutely.
not going to come to me, in the current predicament that I'm in. And so again, I have recently found that, and I again have just been so peacock proud, because I mean, just to know I have ancestors who served in
Absolutely.
the yeah, with the color troops. And I actually have a rifle from my grandfather's grandfather. So my grandfather, he was born in not 18. My grandfather was born in 1920. His grandfather, if it's the grandfather that I'm thinking of who would have been able to serve in the war, then that grandfather, which is my second great grandfather, would have been born in 1825, because his other grandfather would not have been old enough to serve because he was born in 1860. So
That's
anyway,
amazing. Look at, I love it. I love
yeah,
it.
so just to have this, like, it's at my house, and so again, just things like that. I don't know. It just makes me like so proud. And so people often ask me like, "What's my end goal?" Because one minute you see me doing the family history, or you see me,
Absolutely.
traveling. And
Absolutely.
usually now when I'm traveling, I'm taking care of my elders. I'm not traveling because I'm just out here trying to live a luxurious life. Like, I love, love, love my elders. And so if I found out they're in the hospital or they're at
Right.
home, and it's just like, oh, well, I don't know when the last time somebody has come to see, I'm going to see them. So
I love it.
anyway, I have a life dedicated to that, as well as serving in Shreveport. And then as well as, the political um landscape that I tackle from time to time. So people often say, "Well, DJ, what's your end game?" And I often say, "I want to live to tell the story." And
Yes.
so that's
Yes.
it for me. It's not about
Yes.
making a certain, amount of money, or,
Yes.
having a sellout book, or what. It is literally, and it's nothing wrong with those who aspire towards those things.
Exactly.
I want to live to tell the
Exactly.
story.
Exactly. It's all about knowing your purpose as well, right? And so what tends to happen is once you know your purpose, then all those other things align for you. And so you have to be
Absolutely.
purpose driven above all, above all.
Absolutely.
And all those other things come to you. So I love to hear that you've identified the purpose, not the mission, not the result, but the purpose. And
That's
that's
it.
so important. So, so important. So my next question is, So, well, you kind of already hit it because, and maybe you didn't, but you just talked about the family members you found out about the war. So,
Mm-hmm.
my next question is, what has been the most interesting discovery you've made about your family so far? So, I guess
Hmm.
you would tell me which of those is your favorite because you've hit so many awesome points. So, which would be your favorite thing so far?
So I'm gonna give you my latest favorite because I've talked
Okay.
about a couple of other favorites, and that's gonna be hard to try and qualify them
Okay.
in the amount of time that we have. So I'm gonna talk about I have done my DNA test, right? So I did my DNA test, and then I made sure my mom did her DNA test. I mean, I've
Okay.
DNA tested almost everybody, okay?
Okay.
And so one of my latest discoveries is that I have a line of people that they attach to Tensar Parish, St. Joseph. So specifically, the former mayor, I think his name was Joseph Brown of Saint Joe. He's deceased now, but he is a cousin to me. I match with nieces of his, and I mean all of us do, and they're showing up as like second cousins with my mom,
That's
and then
close.
yeah, and so when I've gone and kind of researched here and there, I'm like, okay, well, this is a line of Jordans, and I'll never forget. This is some of my favorite part. My granddad, he would always tell me last names, surnames of people that we're related to. So he would say, we're related to the Turners, or we're related to the Jordans, or what have you. And I can remember him saying, we're related to the Jordans. Well, I thought, okay, the Jordans were like a set of in-laws to his dad,
Okay.
but it seems that there's some type of other connection because and so that has been my favorite. That has been my favorite. And so look, I'm living to tell the story. That's all I can say. That's all I can say.
I think, and doing exactly what you just talked about a minute ago. You said, "I just want to tell the story," and so not only are you telling your story, but you're in essence helping other people tell theirs, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And we don't have to be ashamed of our stories. Everybody
come
knows that
on,
for
come
us,
on.
cousins may have married cousins or just all kinds of, different things. And we had a very different plight here in America.
Yes,
So, yes, a lot of
yes,
things could have been alleviated if we
yes,
were not enslaved. But
yeah,
nevertheless,
yes, yes. I love what you said about how our experience was just so different. And I think a lot of times there are so many things, and you're actually tapping on a question I'm going to ask you in a minute. But a lot of times there are a lot of things that we don't understand, and at the end of the day, it's the pathway to how we got here, right? So what are we choosing to do with
absolutely.
those things that we learn along the way? I love that. I love that. Okay, so you have online communities on Clubhouse and Facebook. So how is the work you do to unify people who are not blood related, but share the same interest in their family lineage? So how do you work through these programs to unify people who are not blood related but share the same interest in family lineage? Let me make
Gotcha,
sure you clarify
gotcha. I'm gonna say hey to Jesse Blonder. Hey Jesse.
that.
I didn't want to miss that comment. So essentially I work to unify people by making them feel at home. I'll never forget, like when I was a little girl, one reason I just love to go to my grandparents' house is because of how I felt, how they made me feel. I love to go to the country to visit the elders because of how they make me feel.
Yes,
And so I create an atmosphere that is like a home atmosphere.
I like
Yeah,
that.
we might disagree, but we're gonna love each other overall. And
Absolutely.
so, I really, hey, Coach Simmons, how you doing? I love to use that approach, and we also use the approach that we share information. We
Absolutely.
don't tell. We don't try to be the genealogy guru of the no clout chasing over here. We're
Family,
family. And
family put
so
family
we
first. I like that.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't play about it either. We
Right.
don't degrade one another. We don't, degrade what each other may or may not know. We are there to ask questions, uplift one another, and it is okay to have expertise. Like that is fine. But if we ever make one another feel uncomfortable in a way that is intolerable, then you can get kicked out of this club. Maybe seriously,
I don't blame you. Right,
kicked
right.
out of the club for fighting. So if you make someone feel seriously, if you make someone in a part of this space feel, uncomfortable to the point
Absolutely.
where it's, damaging towards them, I
Right.
just don't play that. I don't play that. So, I actually have found one relative in the group, but I have plenty of people who found plenty of relatives,
I love
but
it.
my family, I'm thinking my family must have come over by like the 1600s, especially my maternal families. I'm thinking that we were on some of those earlier boats.
Okay.
And we just have an older set of DNA all together.
That is
They
awesome.
Ancestry gives you these breakdowns. And so it says that we are like Louisiana Creole people, and it gives you the time that the Louisiana Creole people, cultivated the land and what have you. And it says we're Louisiana and Mississippi people. And then we're also early Virginia people. And when I'm talking to people from Virginia who message me back on Ancestry, not everybody messages me back, but the Virginians are sometimes really, I mean, they're really responsive actually. And they will let me know, what is what, who their ancestors work for. I mean, we try to get it together because some of us are pretty close cousins. My aunt, in fact, my mom's sister, has a second cousin via DNA. And sometimes, we may not match as high with other cousins. So this specific cousin is like a third cousin to my mom, or maybe a fourth, but she's like a second cousin to my aunt. And so just yeah, and she's never left Virginia. And so just to have that, which is kind of scary, and it's like, well, whose DNA is this?
Exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, everybody that matches with this specific cousin, none of them are in the South. And so just to like see this whole DNA thing play out, and I can't remember, Jesus, the question that you just asked me. I hope I'm kind of hitting on some of it. But I'm gonna shut up in a minute. But I'm just gonna say that DNA is powerful, and I have a phrase. I say the DNA don't lie, because when I do work with people who are adopted, and we, help them find blood relatives and what have not, everybody is just, oh, okay, hey, cousin, hey, sister, hey, daughter. Not everybody like that now.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's like, ooh, I was thinking that this is going to be a secret for the rest of my life. And it's like, no, we have access to too much now. And
Absolutely.
in order for things to be a secret. So,
Absolutely.
I can get that little pushback. So that's why I have to say, like, DNA, it does not lie. It's something that's coming through as your first cousin. It's your first cousin. You may not know
Child,
him, and it's okay.
child, we
But
need to talk about some
that's
things.
it. That's it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. My family and I have been in the conversation that we plan to do our 23andMe test this year, and I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we had done it earlier, but I think a lot of my personal knowledge about just how great things will be or can be has been different. One of the troubles we've had is I've done ancestry.com and put our name in there, but the spelling of my family's name actually changed on the maternal side. It
Mm-hmm.
changed probably about 50 years ago. And so a lot of times they'll want to connect us all the way back to mazes that have an E in there, but we know for a fact that our name was not always spelled Y-E-S,
Mm-hmm.
M-A-Y-E-S, that it used to just be spelled M-A-Y-S. So
Mm-hmm.
I finally told my mom, I was like, I think we should do 23andMe. She was like, I've been thinking about the same thing.
Yes. Why
So
are you all choosing 23andMe over Ancestry DNA?
well, we haven't. I've seen Ancestry DNA, but I really just saw that 23andMe was kind of popping. So, is there
Huh.
one that you think is a better route to take, or do you think either one of them is good? Is one offers something that the other one doesn't?
Yes,
Okay,
and the nuances are very much like, I'm just gonna say, for the sake of time, go to YouTube. But
okay,
what I will say, that because I have tests on both, and what I will
okay,
say is that I have found that the ability, and this is, I guess, a nuance, but the ability to be able to see family trees if somebody has
okay,
something in ancestry is better. It's harder
okay,
to build trees in 23andMe, and the folk in 23andMe, a lot of them don't know anything.
okay,
So,
okay,
and they're only a DNA site. So it's
okay,
no history. It's no, well, this may be your cousin this way, or like it. so they give hypothesis sometimes on
Okay.
ancestry DNA. And
Okay.
so essentially, I have found that ancestry tests more black people,
Okay.
and they have more kids available so that you can get a greater idea, especially of who those are family members are close, and then even going back, and 23andMe, they do a great job with showing you um your the DNA segments and how people connect to you if they choose to connect, because a lot of people you have to ask, are you willing to connect, and then they'll show you like the DNA segments,
Okay.
and do you connect over the X chromosome, or is it on the one, or is it like that. But nevertheless, again, there is very little information. I know my cousins, I'll say it that way. When I'm going through looking, I'm like, they don't have surnames here. They don't have,
Okay.
and so it's like, I can know I'm related to you, but if you don't have any buy-in more than what I'm seeing here, then it's harder for me. And then another thing too is I found that a lot of my relatives that I know tested on ancestry. So I don't
Okay.
have a doubt with how I connect with Rachel. Rachel is my grandmother's first cousin on her mama's side. And so I was able to, really just look through and say, okay, this person connects like this person connects like that. And so I'm able to tie in a lot of my lines easier. Now, somebody may find that 23andMe is more valuable to them and maybe to whatever they're trying to figure out, because I found a first cousin once removed on my daddy's side over there, and I'm like, well, either I'm the child of the first cousin or they're the child of the first cousin. So I'm like, well, who is this first cousin? And so nevertheless, we haven't been able to figure that out, but I did reach out. But
Oh,
no,
good.
yeah, but again, if they don't leave information there, they
You
can
have a
say,
hard
yeah, I'm willing
time.
to connect. But if they don't
Okay.
connect past hitting that button, then you may not be
Okay.
seriously. Then it's like, oh, okay, well, I really don't know any more than I did.
Okay.
So yeah, to that degree, because you have already started the maze tree, you can link,
I did that.
so
Okay.
it may be better. But I mean, look at them both. Look at them both. And then you may
Okay.
decide that you're into this thing and decide to take them both.
Okay. I'm definitely going to do that. And thank you for giving that recommendation because that's very helpful. This has been a learning journey as well. And like I said, we have a lot of the oral stories as well that have come from my
Hmm.
grandfather that my mom recorded. I have some notes from my grandmother, and I actually knew my great grandmother. But yeah, and since I brought it up to my mom, she actually dug up a picture of my great great grandmother. We've been
What?
told story like my family would always talk about having Indian in our family, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm like, black people always stunned like we have so much.
Mhm. Mhm, mhm.
However, there is a picture, and the only reason I won't show it online is because I don't know how my mom and my family will be about it.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but there's a picture of my great grandmother's mother, and
mhm,
honey, she is 100% Native American woman. And I was
mhm,
so blown away, and I was like, "Oh my God, Mama, this is where your nose came from." And they started laughing. I was like, and I see so much of my mama, and I like so much of my grandmother, the features that they have, and I didn't realize honestly how close it was in our bloodline. And I was just
mhm.
so amazed, amazed by that. And we were just looking at the picture earlier today, so, it's so intriguing to like be able to put those things in your hands. And at this point, this is my great great grandmother's mother. Like I knew my great grandmother. And so to see her mother, I'm just like, are you serious? This is her. I said, are you sure this is her mom? And I was like, yeah, that's her mom. I remember her when I was a little girl. I told you that.
Ah!
And so my family has the story of another Native American named Mama Gainai, who my mom says was half Indian and half African, like straight 50-50. And that is where the blanket was passed to her from. So I'm very interested in learning more about that. And my grandmother came up in Cottonport. Louisiana, which
Mhm,
is right
mhm,
by the Sabine River. So I'm
mhm.
so interested. I've been asking questions about the Sabine. I'm like, it's hard for me to believe that you all are telling me they were not shipping people in on the Sabine River because the river is too big. And I think about how big the Washita River is. I'm like, stop playing these games with us. We're not
That's
that far
it.
from the Mississippi. So as you were talking earlier about discovering that you had family in St. Joe, and I was like, that's close to the Mississippi River. And then you
Yeah,
said cross over to the Mississippi. I was like,
yeah,
that's like
yeah,
bringing together this picture for us because the waterways were the main routes of transportation.
mhm.
So that was just so insightful, and you have me all excited, of course, even more excited about digging into my own story. And I want to thank Coach Simmons for always showing love. Definitely we have to be proud of our history. Absolutely. Our people went
Absolutely,
from
coach.
slaves to all barons, doctors, senators, lawyers, and millionaires. Absolutely. And a lot of them achieved that success during times when they were not even initially allowed to read. And so we have
Mhm.
to think that Black success did not just start. It was often restricted, limited. They were given the least, and they always made the most happen. And I think that I know that we talk about a lot of gruesome things that happen, and we need to know that as well. But I think that in the midst of it, to just imagine that we have survived anyway.
That's
We
it.
have survived anyway. And
That's it.
there's no reason we can't continue to do great things when we consider what so many of our people went through and how many changes they still continue to make.
That's
So
it.
those stories, if nothing inspires you, going back to look at those stories should be inspirational. Absolutely. And Dr. Nikki is in. We're glad to see her chipping in on the conversation tonight. And
Hey,
she does
Dr.
some great
Nikki.
history work. Yeah, she does some great history work. Um, okay, so next question. Um, let me see. So let's do this one. What is your advice for people who may feel discouraged because they know so little about their family history? So if they're saying, as for right now, I don't even want to begin because it's just been me, my mom, and dad. I don't know anything past them. What do you say about people who feel discouraged, or if they take the DNA test and find that they're not finding the things that they wanted to find? What's your advice to those people?
Hmm. My advice would be to either get started if you're not started, or to stay the course. It's pieces in our DNA that all of us may question. Like, for instance, as close as the Jordans are to me, the ones who I told you from Waterproof and from St. Joseph, and I mean all of the Tensai Parish, basically. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, was one of these gentlemen's, you know, uh direct descendant of mine, that's a Jordan, because nothing is showing up saying Ellis. And so, but again, that line, it is further back than closer up. But I will say, for those who have issues maybe with the closer up, just do the healing work. And if you decide that you want to go farther, then go farther. But if it's just a matter of, I didn't come from a family who wouldn't tell me things. My family was honored to tell me who they were.
Absolutely.
They were just like, this is who we are, this is where we come from. I need to tell you this, I need to show you this. I mean, my granddaddy took me to the Peck plantation so I could know that this is one of the plantations that we came off of. And I walked in there pretty recently, in my adult years with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I said, if I find a photo of my Aunt Maddie worked there up until like the 80s and 90s, and she just kind of got older. And the Peck family actually made sure that she was comfortable in a nursing home and that she had everything that she could want or need. She raised their children. And I walked in that house and I found my Aunt Maddie, a photo of her on the wall.
Absolutely.
And everybody was like, girl, you need to take that photo with you. Go back and get that photo. And I'm just like, I'm gonna think about it. And so eventually I probably will just go get the photo. French, and she's gone back 2 generations.
Yeah.
Depending on how far back those 2 generations go, because I don't know how old your
Okay.
ancestors are two generations. Because for instance, like my mom, she is 60 years old, and I just mentioned that her great grandfather was born in 1820. And so that is a huge gap. Like, I did not know my great grandparents, my maternal great grandparents at all. They were all deceased, but they were all they were all born in the 1800s. And so, nevertheless, I would say to check, if you found them on the census tracts, begin to go, you can go into family search, because you can see the documents a little bit better there. They'll give you insight. So maybe you can pull some death certificates. If you can find, let's say if it's a great aunt who lived up until a certain time, and she leaves a maiden name behind of her mom, or she leaves her parents, both of her parents' names behind, etc. All of those things can help to get you farther, to help you get farther back. Again, depending on where you are in, when you go two generations back, you can check the Freedman records. 1 minute, I'm gonna read this comment. Correct. And so, Dr. Patterson, if you have access to I'm at Emory, and we have what they call a history vault. And so some of those plantation owners left records. If you are in, where is Dr. Patterson? Dr. Patterson, where's your family from? And then I can maybe even tell you what library they might be in. If I know, I don't know all of the libraries, but I know specifically one of the best resources for Louisiana is going to be LSU. But I would say mom is 77, grandmother was in her 90s. Aha. Okay. Oh, okay. Um, and in order to see records that are at LSU, they're in the history vault. You can just type in the slave owner's name. Even if it's the French plant Assumption. Okay, so yeah, there are some good records on Assumption. So you can type in the French plantation. You can just kind of aim broadly in the search if you don't know specific names, and then you might even want to type Assumption Parish, and then you can see what will populate. If you don't have access to the history vault, then I would say the Freedman records are free on ancestry.com. The same records are available on Family Search, and you can look in those places as well. Depending on where in Assumption, or I guess Assumption is pretty, it's pretty like the same that it would have been in the 1800s. I mean, a lot of the parishes are, including Caddo, where I'm at. So the families that lived around each other like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, a lot of them are still around each other now, because after the great migration of people, nobody else really moved into those areas. So that is essentially what I'm saying. And you can just ask, even get history from neighbors, because a lot of our family history is just all intertwined. And so it's like, yeah, the Jacksons live next door, but maybe the Jacksons were actually our aunt's relatives, but we only knew her as a Jackson. We didn't know her as an Ellis or what have you. So absolutely not much change here. Okay, yes. So you the elders that are left there, or even just, you can call the neighborhood patrol, the sisters who are the ushers, and they got to do this at the church, and they got to do that, and then they got to do this for their grandkids or what. Call them and just start to ask questions. And I would say, Dr. Patterson, ask every question, whether it's the questions 2 generations back, whether it's moving forward, what have you, because like you say, not much has changed. That's actually how I found my Aunt Maddie Dunbar Lee's last name. All of her paperwork says Maddie Lee. She married my uncle, Prince Lee. And someone in the country maybe a couple of months ago said, "Oh yeah, Maddie was a Dunbar. Her daddy was Mose Dunbar." I could not have found that, you know? And so that's what I mean by just simply having conversations, even with the neighbors who have never lived, in the
I love
family who
it.
has never lived. Mm.
And I just want to say how interesting that is because I've been talking with I've actually been going down independently and doing some research in the Lake Providence area. My
Mm-hmm.
next stop is St. Joe and the Tallulah area because they're so close to the Mississippi in order to try to find out more information about where people were getting shipped in and out of. And with some of the
Mm-hmm.
standing plantation homes, because we unfortunately don't, it's so hard to gather that kind of information or stories around here. And I actually have written down some names of people that I heard in a conversation that I think may be able to give me some insight. But one of the things that EJ told me about was I told him about seeing this little old church in the middle of this big cotton field with the biggest, I guess, cotton gins I've ever seen in my life. And how I was so blown away, and people still attend this church. And I
Mm-hmm.
was telling him there were cars, and he told me the next time I go, if the church is still in session, stop and ask if I can talk to some people from there. And he said, Jamie, because I guarantee they can tell you a whole bunch of history,
That's it.
including how that church got in that cotton field, how long
Mm-hmm.
it's been there, what plantation once stood or still stands, and what you need to know about that community. So
Mm-hmm.
I've scribbled down some names to do some research because I'm so interested. I don't think we ever have enough conversations about what was the Mississippi. We're talking about the Mississippi is right
Yeah.
there. Yet
Yeah.
we're not having a conversation about people being shipped into this pocket of Louisiana.
Yes.
So listening to you, share this information and give people insight is so important. It's so good. It's making me a little emotional. My mom is
Yeah.
apparently in the conversation listening. And so she actually told me I could share the picture. So I'm going to show you guys this picture.
Ooh, you have to.
And she also said that
Thank
the
you,
E,
Mom, for letting her share the picture.
she said that the E was added in our name when my grandfather was a child. So it's been over 80 years. And so the
Mm.
interesting part about that is we have a lot of people on Facebook who have the last name Mays who send us friend requests.
Mhm.
Tennessee, like all over the country. And we just
Mhm.
accept it. And then they inbox me. They're like, hey, cousin. I'm like, I have no idea. And even here in Monroe, people are always asking me if I'm related to the Mazes here. Well, there are actually two groups of mazes, MAYS and MAYES. So I could be kin to either one. And I tell people straight, like, so that's something I also want to know. Because if I have kin folks here, then I actually want to go and meet them and say, we are actually cousins. But
That's
I tell
it.
people, like, I have no idea because my family is all from South Louisiana. But
Mhm.
I think the further we dig, we have found out that our pathway actually goes to Mississippi. So I
Mhm.
just don't know whether they're my relatives
Mhm.
or not. So I'm interested in finding that out. So this is the picture, and I'm gonna try to hold this up of my great grandmother's mother.
Oh,
I
wow.
know
I love that.
that is her, and so I don't know how well you guys can see that, but
Yes,
she
and
is
back her out just a little.
definitely
Uh-huh, and
Native
tilt her
American.
maybe a little forward.
Let's see.
The top. The top just tilt. Yep. Yep.
That's
Gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous.
so it's been so cool to be able to you know, just learn some of those stories and talk and have all those kind of things. So, somebody says she had never seen a real cotton gin. I took pictures of this place. I'm gonna post them and I am gonna complete this story because my goal is to also conduct an interview with anybody that can tell more about what they know, and what happened in that area and closer to the Mississippi River in these communities,
Mhm.
especially since these communities are over like 95% black. I know over 90% black at this point. So how did we know that they were once thriving, and we know how they got that way, and we know
Mhm.
that a lot of these people are probably descendants of enslaved people who had to work that area. So I'm
Mhm.
interested in just learning more about that. And so what you're talking about is just it hits on it's just a bigger story, but getting all the small
Absolutely.
pieces, the pieces of that puzzle
Absolutely. I
that
mean,
you're
it's
teaching us
always
about.
it's always a bigger story. It's
Yeah,
always a bigger story.
I
So,
love it.
uh, the different
Really
ways to
awesome.
spell that. Oh yeah,
It's awesome.
spell the last
Um,
name.
so this is a question right here. And I do have another one I just want to throw in there as well.
Mhm.
About some, and this one is super interesting to me, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. I recently came across a guy who was doing some genealogy and family tree work, and you kind of talked about this a minute ago. He made some very gruesome discoveries that were very traumatic to him, and they involved um so, sexual assault that happened,
Mm,
and some issues with family members that try, and not necessarily among each other, but the stories that he had to hear, and some uncomfortable things in that nature as well about family, that you talked about earlier, into family marrying, and some this one story about being forced to um do some
mhm,
things, in order for them to live. Unfortunately, the likelihood of this happening for Black people is very high. Very,
mhm,
we know that. I'm in a group right now on Clubhouse where we are actually listening to biographies about Black people, and Black people during enslavement, and even
mm.
some of the stories that we have found about the slave owners. And some of the things that you hear will bring you to tears. And so, what you've been saying is good. So, my question is, what is your advice for Black folks before they begin this work, and if they discover something that triggers them while they are doing this work?
Hmm. Depending on what you find out, because I mean, it's a plethora of things that can be found out. um Take the time to heal, take the space to heal. If you find that, man, my dad wasn't my dad, or my, whatever the case is, just take the time to heal, and then to restart the work, and then also to just not be ashamed. For instance, my maternal side, like I mentioned to my mom when she saw me crying one day when I took my DNA test, I say, well, mom, my dad's dad is who, we thought it was. She was like, well, girl, what are you crying for? That ain't, that. She was just like, not really getting it. I said, well, mom, you've never had to live this. Your parents were who they say that they were,
Mm-hmm.
your parents were who they say they were. And
Mm-hmm.
we can see it in so many ways. And even when it comes to sometimes how they say, well, Mr. Jenkins, he had two families. He had a family at his home and he had a family across town. Well, my ancestors, on specific ones, except for my great grandfather Boozy, but he was an exception to this. But the others pretty much all stayed within their marriages. There were like not a lot of outside children, if any, and what have you. And so my mom could not grasp the way that I felt because of how my dad feels.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I had a really good, maternal pawpaw, so I don't care. But that doesn't mean that my dad doesn't care. And
Right.
so her being a wife versus me being a daughter, and that being like in my lineage, whether I know the person or don't know him, whatever the case is, it can impact in a different way. So again,
Absolutely.
I would say take time and take space to do that, healing work. And healing looks different for everybody. So that's why I'm just
Absolutely.
saying doing the healing work, because
Absolutely.
healing for me may not be the same for you. What I get peace doing, you may get peace doing something different. And then to just remember that, there will be brighter days, and several brighter days, and that you too will live to tell the story. Someone wants to
Absolutely.
hear, oh yeah, somebody's going to be healed by what they hear from you,
Absolutely. 100%.
if you choose to, speak. And so, oh, Donovan Jenkins has a great comment. Let's see.
We're on the slavery unit, and my seventh graders found it hard to believe that some of the last names of slaves were the names of slave owners. Most of them were, and that families were ripped apart. Made them rethink how extensive a deep dive into their lineage could be. But this is why, and it's so crazy because he's making that comment, and I actually have a question about critical race theory because of this. But this is why it's so important that we teach kids um, about all parts of our history, especially in a state like Louisiana, where
Hmm.
this state thrived off of slavery, and
Still.
still restricts the voices of Black people. I'm not getting started tonight because I'm tired of
Mm-mm.
having the conversation. But this is why it's so important to know this, because a lot of the kids you're teaching have no idea what their identity is because they don't know this very basic information.
Oh,
So it's very,
absolutely.
and parents may not know. We assume people know more than they do, but People are trying to make it day to day and just don't know. And if it's not given to people with the same level of importance as everything else that we teach in the curriculum, then folks are not going to really understand how this connects to your life. Such an important statement. So intense for me, as you can see.
Yeah, oh,
Go
look, it's intense, and I have more that I want to say, but I'm like, well,
ahead.
oh,
Now, go
let's
ahead.
move.
This
That's
is the
it. That's
spot
it.
where you
I'll just
speak
come
your
back.
piece. This is the spot where you speak your piece. So please say it.
Oh no, I'll come back because we're going to talk about the necessity to close Angola. So,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Let,
So
let's get to it. Yes, I
I'll just
cannot
be
wait.
back for that.
Okay, so I'm gonna read. I know I'm gonna clap to close us out with a piece tonight because you're talking about some real things. Okay, so I wanted to ask you this question. Okay, this is the one that I wanted to bring in since you were answering such great questions about what we need to do. I have become friends with a woman who is actually has she is actually a professional speaker. She does diversity, equity, and inclusion work. She is a white woman, and I'm just saying it because it's going to be important to the story I'm about to tell. Okay, and so she is has been revisiting how she is telling the story of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and is seeking to build a platform that makes sure to include Black voices and working from both sides of the table to be the actual representation of diversity, inclusion, and equity. One part of her story is going to involve her partner is going to also be telling the work she did to find out about her family who experienced enslavement.
Mm,
She recently found out that her great great grandfather, lived in New Orleans,
mm,
or it might be great great, so somewhere generations back, and has been told that he was actually uh, an enslaver, and that he had over 100 slaves. And she has been told where the land is. The building does not stand anymore, but she has not been able to find any more information. Do you have any advice for what she should be able to do? And
mm.
there's more I will tell you a little because she has given me specific information, but I don't want to announce it here. But I
Absolutely,
just wanted to
absolutely.
give you that. So, what can she do to do more research?
Hmm. I would say go to the clerk of court, the
Okay.
Orleans Parish Clerk of Court, and you want to get a track of, this land and what have you. You want to keep that, what did this, track of land, when did it exist, under her, what, great great grandfather, whatever his last name was. Um, I would also say, like, go through the probates and wills to see if he left anything there or if anything was recorded. Um, or Orleans Parish just did an extensive work. Some things may be available on ancestry.com or Family Search. Family Search is free. And they have basically the same records that Ancestry has. Ancestry will just kind of populate things for you a little bit easier, but nevertheless, sometimes Ancestry can be really reaching, if you will, and it won't be, accurate and exactly what you need. But also, you can go to the America's Historical Newspapers and you can type in either the name of your ancestor or the name of the plantation, if you knew that, or what have you. Now, they should know the name of the plantation because all of the landowners would have had to report.
Okay.
Yeah. They would have had to report everything to Orleans Parish, and Orleans Parish may have been a parish that did inventory.
Okay.
So he may have accounted for, I have one carriage, 12 horses, X amount of, slaves. I mean, just like really documented everything. And so the possibilities are, limitless, for those who are, not Black people, because
Mhm.
um yeah. So I would even say check with LSU. Let's say
Okay.
if Yeah, check with LSU. Let's say if there may be other documents out there, maybe her great grandfather or great great grandfather didn't write, whatever it was, but
Mhm.
maybe it's a bill of sale out there, you
Okay.
know. So those types of the documentation is there. It's just a
Okay.
matter of knowing where to find it. So I hope that
Because
those
that's been the hard part.
help.
Said she's hit a few dead ends, but
Mm,
she
mhm.
does have some names and things like that.
Okay, good, good, good. And I would say research all those names and even the derivatives and just the different spellings of the names as well. That can, help, especially for a place that has, just a plethora of diverse last names.
Okay.
And so if it's not Thomas or Lee or Williams and it's, Mouton or what have you, then, you may want to try a couple of different spellings and what have you. But yeah, and then I would say, look at the Freeman records, because if he's an owner, you'll be surprised the people that are saying that I'm owned by such and such. I'm owned
Okay.
by, yeah. Some of those records will give you um the owners and then the names of the enslaved people, and you'll have an okay idea if it is your what second great grandfather, because it will say Orleans Parish, it will say Jefferson Parish, it will
Okay.
say, yep.
Okay. And she is tuned in, so excellent. I and I'll be trying to reach out to you further, so she is listening. Yay!
Good, good. Just make sure that she has my number, because I mean I have access. And then make sure that Dr. Lord Jesus, I can't think of her name right now, but
Nikki.
she, yeah, Dr. Nikki. Make sure that she has my information as well, because I
Okay.
still have access to the history vaults at Emory. And so again, while I can get into these records and kind of be of assistance
She
before I
is
graduate
listening. So
in May.
I will definitely be sure to pass that on because she is listening and she will definitely want this, both of them.
Good, good, good. And
Unless
call
she's listening.
anytime. It's just easier to say call anytime than to be
Awesome.
like, hey, call. Yeah, no, I'm a person that you just call anytime.
And she
And I
has a
appreciate
community on Clubhouse as well.
it. Mhm.
So is it okay for her to come into the genealogy club and
Oh,
to
absolutely. The
okay,
Black Jeans Club is open, and then we have the genealogy kickback and all that.
okay.
I'm gonna be actually up all night. This is what probably, I guess, the last for real comment I want to make is that the 1950 census comes out
I
tonight.
know. Okay, so okay, so let's come back to that because I want you to tell us why this is so important, and I have to make sure that I come in for it because I have my notifications on, but I
Yes,
just don't get to get on because I'm working on this end. But I
yes.
want to make sure that I come in for that because it's so important. So we're gonna come back to all of that when you talk about what you have going on because there are a couple of things you posted on your page, including the statement you made today about how some of y'all gonna be upset that you didn't go find your people when they start talking about reparations because I'm trying to do some work right now to get a guest on that's pushing reparations in another state. And I want people to realize that this is a bigger topic than we think it is. So we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
come back to that because that's so big. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So let's here we go. And Dr. Nikki, I'll get that to you as well. And I don't know if Dr. Nikki is on Clubhouse, but I will make sure to talk to her as well about getting in on the jeans, the Black Jeans Club as well, so she can connect with those folks. So
Absolutely.
okay, perfect. Let's see. And now I'm over here doing a little dance.
Do your dance. Do your dance.
Because I mean, we are at like tonight we're doing that work.
That's
Okay.
it.
So,
We got time.
I'm gonna cry on you in a minute, but I'm trying to keep it together, Daryl, because it's going down in a minute, okay? You know,
Okay.
this is I mean, people don't understand, like, the people, it's so important for me to, like, try to do my part to have these conversations and to make sure I'm meeting the right people that
Mm-hmm.
can teach us, you know, what Black people have been through. We have been through in this country is unmatched in this world. What we have
Mm-hmm.
been through across the world. I still believe, I tell people all the time, I said, we don't truly know if we have people across waters or not. We don't know how we were split on the coast of Africa. That's the story we don't talk about. We don't know
Mm,
how we
that's
were split
true.
on that coast. So we have no idea where some of our people are located. And I've shared the story that, so often people have made it seem like, oh, life was only so difficult here in America, and it was easy to make it seem that way because we didn't have a way to really communicate across waters. And as we get more of a chance to talk across waters, we're finding that we have so much more in common with our brothers and sisters who are across waters and their experiences and whether they can find their people. And so it makes me even more passionate about knowing, are some of these people our direct bloodline connections as well? And are there people who have found out, I have family in Haiti. I have people in Spain. I have family members, who were sent over to the UK. And all this time I didn't know. So what you're doing is really unmasking a bigger level of us finding our people and, in a sense, feeling more complete. There's always a piece of you that feels missing when you realize that the map stops at a certain place. And that you should have the ability to connect more dots, but you can't because you're in this situation where you haven't been given the tools you need. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And because our people were ripped apart. So here's one from my mom as well. She says, from her understanding, the street. So, and that's why my mom built her house there. The street on the side of her is actually named after my grandfather's dad, who I actually did know, my great grandfather, May Street, because he helped to build the street. And on his death certificate and the license, it is spelled Mays. So one of the things we talked about with that crazy, and that's the other thing about Black folks. And I think even in some cases, once we became free, were there some people who changed the spelling of their name as a sense of liberation as well? So just so many things out there about why we see these different evolutions in the spellings of names, but all those things are so important as well. I'm sorry, I'm talking. I'm sorry.
No, you are definitely on it. And a quick tidbit that I want to leave here. Sometimes middle names were actually maiden names of mothers. For instance, we're trying to figure this out. So I mentioned one of my second great grandmothers I have a photo of one of my second great grandmothers, and that's Mary Eliza. She would be my grandfather's maternal grandmother,
Okay.
but his paternal grandmother, born in 1854 in Kentucky, and she was, yeah. And so I still am heavily connected to her two sisters' descendants. So the Wilsons, and some of them are in Monroe. My cousin is Shirley Wilson Pine, if you know her. And another cousin, another set of cousin are the Longs. And so and the Olivers, the Olivers, they all passed us. Okay, their mother, she was the Long, yeah.
Okay.
And so she married and became Oliver, but we are all descendants of three sisters.
I love it. That's amazing.
Okay. Yes. And one of those three sisters, the Wilsons, they're like, so I talked to one of he would be like a third cousin because we share a second grade. Yeah, he would be a third cousin. So I talked to one of my third cousins often. His name is Brandon. Brandon and I, our second great grandmothers are sisters. Follow me. Our second great grandmothers are sisters. Okay. Brandon's second great grandfather, he names himself several different times as Richard Ellis. No, Dick Ellis. Then when he gets older, we see Richard Wilson. I found a war card when he went with Peggy Wilson and Peter Long to go to claim somebody who had died, Davenport Wilson, to go and claim his the pension for him. Yeah, Davenport Wilson. And then so I say, okay, that means Peggy must have been a Davenport. But Dick Ellis, I say he's not using Richard Dick Ellis for nothing. And that is how his paperwork is showing up. It was saying Richard, let me slow down. His name was showing Richard. Yeah, that's how he was writing it. Dick Ellis, and then Richard Dick Ellis Wilson. I say he's not saying that for anything. Like it's a reason why he keeps Ellis there.
Right.
And so I say, well, maybe we can assume that his mom might have been an Ellis. And so sometimes the assumption is correct, sometimes it's not. But back then women did not hyphenate their last name. And so that's why it's so important that when you can go into family search with the free records, the free death records, that you go and look up some of those records, because occasionally they would leave behind maiden names of mothers, and that is essentially important and just vital to the research that
I love
you're
it.
going to conduct.
Why do you think he kept changing his name? Because that's interesting. I have a lot of different theories in my mind about why they may have been changing names. Why do you think?
So I'm thinking maybe as a child, he could have grown up. Okay, his name is Richard. A nickname for Richard is Dick, right? And so it's like Dick Ellis this and Dick Ellis that and blah blah. So they wouldn't get him confused with his daddy, who might have
Right.
been Richard Ellis as well. And we're talking about somebody that was born in like 1840.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't found a parent because we can't say Peggy was a parent even though she was
Mm-hmm.
born in 1800. She could have
Right.
been a sister, she could have been multiple things. And I'm saying
Right.
that because my papa, Papa Archie, he's my great grandfather. He was born in 1888, but his
Okay.
sisters were born in like 1860 and 18. So I
Okay.
mean, they were 1850. So I mean, they were quite a bit older. So but yeah, multiple reasons though. Some just didn't want to be any connection to like former enslavers and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, for my family, because I know how I am about my name and our names and all of that. So I'm thinking because I'm so much like this side of the family that he wanted to preserve a mother's maiden name.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking that that is what it is.
I love it. I
Mm-hmm.
love it. Coach Simpson says, yes, in Texas, they left behind property and money. Yeah, they did in order to
Mm-hmm.
pursue freedom and other opportunities. You're right. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. You're right. You're right. Miss Nikki says, this is so interesting. We're always invited to a family reunion of some family members who do not share the same last name of any of the relatives I know. So this is helpful. So so maybe they have some maiden names or know of some
Mm-hmm.
connection. And hopefully if you when you link up with Daryl, she'll be able to give you some clarity about that going forward. So I think that's really, really awesome. And this is the thing that's interesting about Dr. Nikki. She actually worked with the Louisiana state curriculum because she was an educator, now homeschools her son, but worked with the Louisiana state curriculum in assessing history for
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana and talking about what's important. And so here she is as a person that's advocating for Louisiana to be more inclusive, but struggling to find her own identity for her family.
Wow.
Ah, it just is.
It'll get
It
you.
just shouldn't have to be this way for us. And then fight to like make sure that our stories can be included in the textbook when our people have literally been so disenfranchised and put all over this country and stuff like that. Like, there's no way that you should be here fighting for your voice to be heard or be included in a state where, our population is one third black, and black people bring the tourism to this state and bring the money here, and we are the basis of the culture, and we can't even find our own people. It just shouldn't have to be that way.
That's
Should
right.
not have to be that
And
way.
we
So
shouldn't be fighting for another congressional district. We are due
well,
that.
exactly. And if we talk about, well, this goes into even what you're talking about with prison. I'm trying to wait till we get there because I've been pushing this conversation about the issues with Angola and Louisiana's prison system and the recent information. I put some TikToks out about it because I haven't even been on TikTok as often, but even talked about it there. And so we'll get to that in just a minute because that's going to be so important. And it's so I'm gonna ask you one more question because I want to make sure I don't want to try to take too much of your time unless you decide to let us take more of your time. And it's 8:13. So let me ask you this question and allow you. So this is what I really want to ask you too, but let's do. Breaking generational curses is a trending topic, but the concept of breaking generational curses seems to be misunderstood. How would genealogy work and research a part of breaking generational curses?
Hmm. So I believe that I have to talk about my understanding of generational curses. So I don't necessarily understand generational curses within the biblical context with how it is misused often to shame our people. I mean, we're doing no more than what was done to us during times of conversion into Christianity and respectability politics and respectability culture and what have you. I understand that there are socioeconomic issues in this country. There are also issues of racism in this country that oftentimes have us bound, and it can
Absolutely.
look like, feel like that it, that it's a generational, curse. So again, if we're going to address um the Christian conservative view of generational curses, then we also have to talk about how the racists, they're having children too, who will grow up to be racist, and then that is a generational curse. And so
Speak.
mm-hmm.
Speak.
So yeah, and so
Speak.
knowing, a little bit more about yourself, it's for self, it's for you, it's for those who will come after you, it's for those who care now. Like I care. If you don't have anybody else to tell, just call Daryl Joy, because she will be excited and celebrate with you. And there will be so many fellow cousin finders, so many fellow family tree researchers and historians that will do the same. And again, essentially, just the pride that I have when it comes to, my family,
Absolutely.
I hope that everybody will have it,
Absolutely.
um I found out that one of my ancestors, on my grandfather's paternal side, that he was lynched. He was actually an in-law's brother that he was lynched. And I say, well, whatever he died for, I know he died for a good cause. And because I mean, we are not the type that are subservient Black people at all. So
At
if you're
all.
looking for us to be passive and, oh, everything's gonna be all right, we may not be the people you're looking for. Uh, I'm serious. I'm serious. We may not be those.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so we do believe that we can work towards things being okay, but we also believe that it is not all on us to do so either.
Right.
So
Accountability. We believe that accountability exists,
absolutely,
and holding and putting that accountability forward is important, and speaking up is important. And Alicia says
absolutely.
here, I don't think they thought the descendants of the enslaved in this country would pursue what's owed to them in a more legal and structured fashion. And it's so interesting because there has always been the assumption that Black people are not as smart, or and I think that's more about people selling themselves a ticket that they knew actually was not true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been more of a hope that
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't versus actually believing. Because if they
Mm-hmm.
actually believed that we wouldn't be intelligent enough to do it, there would have never been a restriction on reading for
That's it.
slaves. Who would have
That's it.
cared?
And
Yeah,
it's always been a fear. We
yeah,
don't often talk about the fear of well, it when Blacks get reparations, or when Blacks do receive another district, that is due. Let's keep it 100. Louisiana
hmm
and Mississippi,
hmm
we're both 1/3 Black, and we're on our way to half. And we
absolutely,
shouldn't have to get to half to get another congressional district. It should not
absolutely,
be another 10 years.
absolutely,
So I hope that the governor and our legislators who are in session now can really work that thing,
absolutely.
because again, this is something that we are due. And also, when we talk about accountability, I want to say this. Alicia is on here as well, and she's going to know where I'm headed with this accountability piece. When we have elections, I don't care what is on the ballot. You can mail back your ballot. You can fax back your ballot. You can go to the polls and vote. And we have to start voting for people who hold a better interest for
Yes,
us, and who don't
yes,
just talk about it, but they're
yes,
actually about it.
yes, yes.
They're actually about it.
Bout it, bout it,
That's it.
bout it, bout it.
That's it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's so true. So I guess I kind of want us to get around to. So I'm gonna ask you about what do you have going on now? What can we expect in the future? So I wanted to hear you talk about the perspective on Angola and why it needs to. So let's kind of freestyle the rest of that, and so that'll kind of give us where we want to go with this
Okay. So
conversation.
I
I will
am
be
gonna
over
come back
time.
and do the Angola piece because it's like really extensive and I actually have to walk my dogs before it gets like too late. And I have two of them. But I do want to go ahead and address what am I doing now? What am I going to be doing in the future? And I don't mean to cut it short by any means. If I would have walked the dogs a little earlier, then it would be all good. I could just be here for tonight, but I need to go and walk them before I have to start watching my back
That's
too much.
right.
'Cause, yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
in Shreveport, and somebody knocked on my door today, and he's selling something, and it's not just a regular solicitation. People are
Yeah.
giving him actual card numbers and what have you, and it just didn't seem too promising to me.
Yeah.
And so I have been a victim of identity theft before.
Yeah.
Someone got my, oh yeah, I'm talking about, I don't know how you opened $100,000 line of credit in my name, but I'm just gonna stay on the topic of what I'm doing now. And so now I am doing the genealogy work um every day. And I am also just in the community mentoring our kids, young ladies, young men, non-binary people, just simply loving on everybody
I love it.
that I can. I will run for office next year. That's on the table, and that's pretty much what I'm doing now. Just staying the course, staying in the fight, and enjoying every single moment of it. So yeah, I'm a dog mom. I don't have any children, but I'm a dog mom. I have one dog, and my mom has a dog, and so I'm babysitting her dog for her. And so, yeah. And so that's what I'm doing.
So I'm actually a kid mom and a dog mom, and my dog is
Yay!
actually older than my kid. So I completely
Mm.
understand. So what I wanted to do is basically, so I will be definitely reaching out to you to have the prison conversation, and I would
Mhm.
definitely like for us to perhaps take that in a panel direction. So I will definitely be getting on top of that. That's very important. We did hear you say that you will be running for office, and so I want people to be aware of that. I am dropping the links to Miss Daryl Waters in the comments, and I'm gonna ask her when she gets time tonight. Will she come and post the links to Clubhouse as well, so that people can get on board? And I think they're on her social media, so you'll be able to check them out there.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join with us tonight, for dropping the jewels that you did. And I will certainly be following up with you as well as connecting these two ladies with you tonight. And
Thank
I'm going to
you.
go ahead and let you off camera so you can do what you need to do, and then I will close us
Okay.
out. I thank you for being so amazing tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. I appreciate it.
No problem. So you guys, tonight was simply amazing. Like I really, really had to try to keep myself together, because when we get the chance to actually start exploring these real culture stories, they are absolutely important to me and amazing. And hearing you all just start really showing a desire to know more and sharing what you already know definitely made me emotional. So I thank you guys for being open, engaging. This was fun. This was fun because sister was showing off that knowledge. Okay, it was so fun, and one of the perfect ways to end to end Women's History Month, by actually talking with people about knowing their history, knowing those aunts, mothers, uncles, cousins that are tied up into this thing here. And so she said that we are going to continue to, we're going to work on that prison conversation, because I've been doing a lot of conversation about that later. So now I'm more excited than ever to ensure that we have that conversation. I have put the links for Daryl Joy Waters in the comments. Please connect with her. For those of you that she spoke with about helping you with your genealogy, please send me a message so I can give you her information. And I thank you. Oh, thank you all so much. I thank you guys so much. We're gearing up for two conversations next month. Next month is National Poetry Month, and to be honest with you guys, I'm kind of thinking about how I want to handle that. I've kind of contemplated doing an exploration of some works that I'm working on. um, and trying to bring some more people in to have a talk. So we'll see how that goes. I have some other things I'm interested in doing as well. I hope that you guys had a fantastic month, and I am going to read Muzzle Over Mike to you all again because Daryl Joy Walters is actually a woman of Louisiana. And I heard her talk about how her family spans all over different parts of Louisiana, and she didn't know this. And I was watching Dr. Nikki talk about the different spellings of her names, and knowing that Dr. Nikki has worked in education for so long and yet is unable to connect her own dots. Knowing that Mr. Jenkins works as an educator, is here teaching students about their stories, right? While there are still pieces of his he'll be putting together. And knowing that I was a teacher as well, forced to teach lessons that often didn't reflect me. And often I stepped outside the box and said, I'm going to make sure that I teach my kids things they need to know as well. Give them that diversity and inclusion. And oftentimes that was frowned upon. As long as I was bringing the test results, it was always leniency, but it was never quite approved. And so I made the statement tonight that there is, thank you so much, Ms. Laura, that there is so much work to do in terms of making sure that Louisiana is reflecting how integral Black culture has been in this state, and Black history has played a role in how much Black people work to develop this state. And that this state must do a better job of not only ensuring that they're telling those stories, but breaking those systems that are actually pushing to increase the number of Black people who are incarcerated. And we can dig into those numbers because I have them, but I know I'll go off on a tangent. Not really giving the access to financial wealth that Black people deserve, and limiting opportunities for us to break generational curses through opportunities that actually allow us to have access to information, resources, and the support we need to move forward culturally, business wise, and educationally. So I am going to read Muzzle Over Mike to you guys to close out. And I thank you guys for joining. And I want you to really take this piece into your heart and think about the words that I'm sharing with you for a moment. We brag good food, good people, and an experience there is none like. Love and hospitality in the sportsman's paradise. Then why does my state give me a muzzle instead of a mic? We are home to the international rap anthem. We will two-step into the late hours of the night. The irony of loving Aaron Neville and Keith Frank, but still giving so many a muzzle over a mic. You're Louisiana loud and NOLA proud. Football is a way of life. How can you celebrate the Saints, but say I deserve a muzzle instead of a mic? We are a state still struggling with literacy. Maybe it's because we read stories so full of lies. The truth is always easier to comprehend, but my truth is muzzled when it should be mic'd. The world must know that Black history is American history. Yet Louisiana has no sympathy for this plight. But 1/3 of our population is Black. That's why I denounce my muzzle and reclaim my mic. Louisiana had one of the richest import coasts. Sold and enslaved my people right into, sold and sold my people right into strife. If the shackles are no longer, why am I still bound by the muzzle and not freed by the mic? My grandparents worked in the fields. They lived in fear of dark Louisiana nights. They could seldom speak for themselves. They had a muzzle, but I want the mic. You say get over the past. Move forward into a new light. If progress is what you want, then let me trade my muzzle for a mic. You can romanticize these plantation homes, call the Civil War a white man's greatest fight, but I will dismantle every falsehood. I don't need permission to drop my muzzle for a mic. On which side of history do you wish to stand? That of oppression, racism, and anti-women's rights? A prison pipeline longer than the all pipeline. I'm taking off my own muzzle when I brought my own mic. This state wants representation without negotiation. For those who have suffered, you have no contrite. You want me as a silent partner, but I want a muzzle instead of my mic. Excuse me, but I want to trade my muzzle for my mic. Watching Black men beg you to care causes me anguish I struggle with at night. Is this the cost of our voting rights? You remove our muzzle only to turn off our mics? I am a Black mother, a beautiful brown boy with a future so bright. I don't want our present to be his future. Therefore, my muzzle must become his mic. I just felt it was important again to share this piece because I think it reflects why it is so important for us to continue to advocate for voices to be heard. And though I wrote this about Louisiana, I think every person in every state can relate to this. I think that there is much work to be done. And listening to Daryl tonight is proof that we have to make finding your history and your people more accessible, especially for Black folks who were enslaved. We have to give people the ability to piece together those puzzles and fill in those spaces in our hearts and souls that still feel undone because we cannot connect with the people who got us to where we are today. I want to thank you all so much for joining me as usual. Please, by all means, encourage people to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to join us, and to engage in these conversations. Stay tuned. I will be bringing more flyers to you about our next speakers, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of the night. Take care.